for is more multiplication, but it is shortcuts. And these shortcuts are rather important. So I hope that you will not just say, oh, I don't care about shortcuts, I'll do it the long way. Because these are going to be helpful to you in Chapter 6. All right. The first shortcut, and we learned 3. We learned 3 shortcuts. The first one is FOIL. FOIL is an acronym, meaning it's a word made up of the first letters of other words. It stands for first, outer, inner, last. And it is used to multiply a binomial times a binomial. And that's the only time it's used. It can't be used for a binomial times a trinomial. It's not used to cube a binomial. It's only used in this condition. So let's take a look at our problems and we'll talk about FOIL for each one of them. All right, problem number 1. The instructions actually say use FOIL to multiply. So if I rewrite the problem as x plus 2 times x plus 7. All right. The first means this position times this position. Those are the first terms in each of the binomials. So I'll put an F there for first. What is x times x? It is x squared. And I'll put a little F under that to remind us. Now, outer is right here. I'll put an O there. And what is x times 7? 7x. The inner product is right here. And what is the inner product? X times 2.
2x.
And the last is the product of the last terms, and that is 14. First, outers, inners, last. And what usually happens, not always, usually the outers and the inners are like terms. So I will combine those to be what? X squared plus 9x plus 14.
Would that not be, no, never mind.
Okay, so when you multiply, you're adding exponents, and when you're adding, you're only combining like terms. Now, I'm going to go ahead, because I realize I'm going to make a big mess writing too large. I'm going to go down to the bottom. Well, actually, I'm going to go to a new page. And I'm going to just copy down the problems. Binomial times binomial. All right, problem number 2. You're asked to multiply x minus 6 times x plus 3. All right, what's the product of the first? X squared. What's the outer product?
3x.
3x. What's the inner product?
Negative 6x.
Negative 6x. And what's the product of the last?
Plus 18.
Negative 18. Did you end up with any like terms?
Yeah.
Yes. Once again, the inners and the outers tend to be like terms. So that's x squared minus 3x minus 18. Now, let me tell you what our goal is. Our ultimate goal in using FOIL, and you don't have to do this, but our goal is to look at the outer product and look at the inner product and hold them in our head and add them together and simply write down the answer. Let me show you in problem number 3. We have 2x minus 2 times x plus 2. All right, product of the first. Most people don't have any trouble looking at the first position times the first position. What will you get as a product? 2x squared. Okay, now outer product. Look at the outermost. What do you get as a product for the outers? 4x. Now, although I'm not going to write it down, hold it in your head, 4x. What's the inner product? Negative 2x. What's positive 4 and negative 2? I think it's positive 2x. Positive 2x, because the big one was the positive. Then what's the product of the last? Negative 4. Done. If I had to do this by distributive property, I have a lot of stuff written down. If I can train, and it's a matter of training your eyes to look at first, outer, inner, last, and holding those outers and inners. Now, if that holding those outers and inners was not a good deal for you, then don't do it. Write down 4x, write down negative 2x, and then combine them. Let's look at problem number 4. And we're just going to practice this for a few minutes. I have y minus 6 times 3y minus 2. Product of the first, 3y squared, because it was y times 3y. What's the outer product?
Negative 6 and negative 2.
Okay, hang on. The outer product is negative 2y. What's the inner product? Negative 18y. Now, if you can hold those in your head, negative 2y, negative 18y, that's negative 20y. Do not miss a problem because you're trying to be cool and hold those things in your head, if that's not working for you. If it's not, write them down, and that might be a good place to write them down, and then combine them. Then multiply the last. Negative times negative is positive 12. The only reason that I encourage you to practice doing it and holding them in your head is because I know what's coming up in chapter 6. And it will be of some value to you if you remember that.
How do you get 3y squared?
How did we get y squared? 3y squared. When we multiplied the 1y times the 3y, I multiplied the 1 and the 3 to get the 3. Y times y, add the exponents to get y to the second. Because there was a little 1 and a little 1. Okay, let's do one more. You practice. I'll be quiet. I have 3x plus 2 times 2x minus 3. Please do as much or as little in your head, but get the product. What do you get for the product of the first?
6x squared.
Good. You get 6x squared. The outer product is negative 9x. The inner product is 4x.
Negative 5x.
Negative 5x. The product of the last?
Negative 6.
is negative 6. Now, if that worked for you, then great. That's all you'll write down. But if it would be better for you to write down that your outer product is negative 9x and your inner product is 4x, then please write it down. If you find yourself making sign mistakes, or if you're forgetting the numbers, do whatever it takes to remember. All right, all of this started as the first kind of shortcut. The second kind of shortcut can be when you are squaring a binomial. We did this with FOIL. We did it with the distributive property in the last lesson. But problem number 6, we have x minus 1 quantity squared. Well, does everybody agree that that's x minus 1 times x minus 1? Let's do it by FOIL. Product of the first is x squared. What's the outer product?
1x.
Negative 1x. We didn't have to write the 1. Sorry. What's the inner product?
Negative 1x.
Negative 1x. Do you remember our little discussion, and I said try to remember this, that when you're squaring a binomial, now I didn't call it outers and inners then, I just said two of the products turn out to be the same. So when I combine them, I have negative 2x. What's the product of the last? What's negative 1 times negative 1? It's positive 1. That works fine. You can use FOIL to square a binomial. But I have a little trick. All right, here's the trick. Square the first one. What's x times x?
X squared.
X squared. You notice I didn't write it out twice. To get what I'm going to call the middle term, what comes next, you're going to multiply the two terms that are there. And what do you get when you multiply x times negative 1?
Negative 1x.
Negative 1x. Isn't that what you got over here for the outer and the inner? That's always the way it's going to be. Because of that, multiply that by 2. There's 2 of those. So it's negative 2x. And then square the last one for plus 1. So what you get is a square, 2 times the product, and a square. A square, 2 times the product, and a square. Let's look at number 7. I have 5x minus 3 quantity squared. Let's see if we can use the shortcut. Square the first one. What's 5x times 5x? 25x squared. Now what do I do for the middle? I find the product, which is negative 15x. And then what do I do to that?
Squared.
Not square it, but multiply it by 2. So it's negative 30x. Just double it. And then square the last one for plus 9. The first term will always be positive. The last term will always be positive. And the middle term is always 2 times the product. 2 times the product. Square, 2 times the product, square. If this squaring process becomes confusing to you, or if you forget it, do it by FOIL. Let's look at number 8. I have 4x minus 9 quantity squared. Okay. What's 4x times 4x? 16x squared. To get the middle term, I find the product. What's 4 times negative 9?
16. Oh,
Negative 36x. But I have to double it. Negative 72x. Square the last one.
plus 81.
Plus 81. That's quicker than doing it by FOIL. All right, let's do one more. I'll be quiet and let you do it. What about 7x plus 4 quantity squared? All right, if you look up at the screen, square the first one. 7x times 7x gives me 49x squared. Find the product. 7x times 4 is 28x. Double it for 56x. Square the last one. 4 times 4 is 16. That is squaring a binomial. The last trick, which is the fastest of all of them, it is called a sum and difference product. This is a nice little shortcut that works only on certain kinds of binomial products. Problem number 10 is an example. It says, would you multiply a minus 9 times a plus 9? First of all, is this a sum and difference product? Okay, it is a sum, it is a difference, but the terms have to be identical. One of them with plus and one of them with minus. Let's do it by FOIL one time, and then we'll realize we don't have to work so hard. What's the product of the first? Okay, a squared. What's the outer product? It is positive 9a. What's the inner product? Negative 9a. And what's the product of the last? Negative 81. What do you notice about the outers and the inners? They are actually opposites. They're inverses of each other, one positive and one negative. That will happen every time you have a sum and difference product. So you will just get the first one, a squared, and the last one will always be negative minus 81. If you recognize that you've got a sum and difference product, there is no reason to even think about the outers and inners because they're going to be opposites. So don't waste your time on them. Let's look at number 11. What if I had 4x minus 2 times 4x plus 2? Do you recognize that as a sum and difference product? Mm-hmm. All right. If it is, then that should shortcut our work. What's the product of the first? 16x squared. It is 16x squared. I do not care what the outers and inners are because they're going to be opposites. What's the product of the last? Negative 4. Done. Sum and difference products are some of the fastest to do. Number 12. What if I had 6x minus 1/9 times 6x plus 1/9? I heard all those groans in this class. But you know, the fact that this is a sum and difference product makes our work easier. What's the product of the first? It is 36x squared. I don't have to worry about the outers and inners because they're going to be opposites. So I multiply the last. I know it's going to be negative. Multiply the tops. 1 times 1 is,
1,
and 9 times 9 is
81.
81. No more groaning. That's it. That was not bad. One more. Y'all have been great, very patient, as I've done a lot of lessons and made a lot of mistakes, and my technology has hated me today. Pardon?
Yeah.
The first thing is a U and the second thing is a V. All right, so it's 9U plus V times 9U minus V. Is it a sum and difference product?
Yes.
So, product of the first,
81U squared
81U squared, outers, inners, nobody cares,
minus V squared.
minus V squared. In 5.4, you've had FOIL, squaring a binomial, and sum and difference products. Okay, so that concludes 5.4.